Hello, Miss Mead here. I'm a Year 1 teacher, but anybody can listen to this story. It's called The Magic Finger by Roald Dahl. You can see some of the illustrations here, and unusually for a Roald Dahl book, they're done by someone called Pat Marriott. Normally, it's Quentin Blake, but these are different illustrations. I'm going to read you the blurb first, and then you can decide, do you want to listen to it, or maybe you want to choose a different story. That's fine. So it goes like this. A magic finger flashes punishment on anything you hate. It is a very dangerous weapon, but sometimes you can't help using it. Another remarkable fantasy by the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, and Fantastic Mr. Fox. So, if you want to join me, we'll have a look at it. It goes like this. The Magic Finger. Here we go. The farm next to ours is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Gregg. The Greggs have 2 children, both of them boys. Their names are Philip and William. Sometimes I go to their farm to play with them. I am a girl and I am 8 years old. Philip is also 8 years old. William is 3 years older. He is 10. What? Oh, all right then, he is 11. Last week something very funny happened to the Gregg family. I'm going to tell you about it as best I can. And here's a picture of the 3 children. Here we go. Now, the one thing that Mr. Gregg and his 2 boys loved to do more than anything else was to go hunting. Every Saturday morning they would take their guns and go off into the woods to look for animals and birds to shoot. Even Philip, who was only 8 years old, had his own gun. I can't stand hunting. I just can't stand it. It doesn't seem right to me that men and boys should kill just for the fun they get out of it. So I used to try and stop Philip and William from doing it. Every time I went over to their farm, I would do my best to talk them out of it, but they only laughed at me. I even said something about it to Mr. Gregg, but he just walked past as if I wasn't there. Then, one Saturday morning, I saw Philip and William coming out of the woods with the father. They were carrying a lovely young deer. This made me so cross that I started shouting at them. The boys laughed and made faces at me. Mr. Gregg told me to go home and mind my P's and Q's. Well, that was it. I saw red. And before I was able to stop myself, I did something I never meant to do. I put the magic finger on them all. There she is. Oh dear. I even put it on Mrs. Gregg, who wasn't there. I thought I put it on the whole Gregg family. For months I'd been telling myself that I would never put the magic finger upon anyone again, not after what happened to my teacher, old Mrs. Winter. Poor old Mrs. Winter. One day we were in class and she was teaching us spelling. Stand up, she said to me, and spell cat. That's an easy one, I said. K-A-T. You are a stupid little girl, Mrs. Winter said. I am not a stupid little girl, I cried. I am a very nice little girl. Go and stand in that corner, Mrs. Winter said. Then I got cross and I saw red, and I put the magic finger on Mrs. Winter, good and strong, and almost at once, guess what? Whiskers began to grow from her face. They were long black whiskers, just like the ones you see on a cat, only much bigger. And how fast they grew. Before we had time to think, there were ears out too. Of course, the whole class screamed with laughter, and Mrs. Winter said, Will you be so kind as to tell me what you find so madly funny, all of you? And when she turned around to write something on the blackboard, we saw that she had grown a tail as well. It was a huge, bushy tail. I cannot begin to tell you what happened after that, but if any of you are wondering whether Mrs. Winter is quite all right again, the answer is no. And she never will be. The magic finger is something I have been able to do all my life. I can't tell you just how I do it, because I don't know. But it always happens when I get cross, when I see red, when I get very, very hot all over. The tip of my forefinger on my right hand begins to tingle most terribly. There's the teacher. There she is. And suddenly a sort of flash comes out of me, quick as a flash, like something electric. It jumps out and touches the person who has made me cross, and after the magic finger is upon him or her, then things begin to happen. Well, the magic finger was upon the whole Gregg family, and there was no taking it off again. I ran home and waited for things to happen. They happened fast. I shall now tell you what those things were. I got the whole story from Philip and William the next morning after it all. In the afternoon of the very same day that I put the magic finger on the Gregg family, Mr. Gregg and Philip and William went out hunting once again. This time they were going after wild ducks, so they headed towards the lake. In the first hour they got 10 birds. In the next hour they got another 6. "What a day!" cried Mr. Gregg. "This is the best yet." He was beside himself with joy. Just then 4 more wild ducks flew over their heads. They were flying very low. They were easy to hit. Bang, 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 bang went the guns. The ducks flew on. "We missed," said Mr. Gregg. "That's funny." Then, to everyone's surprise, the 4 ducks turned around again and came flying right back towards the guns. "Hey," said Mr. Gregg, "what on earth are they doing? They are really asking for it this time." He shot them again. So did the boys, and again they all missed. Mr. Gregg got very red in the face. "It's the light," he said. "It's getting too dark to see. Let's go home." So they started for home, carrying the 16 birds they had shot. But the 4 ducks would not leave them alone. They began flying around them as they walked away. Mr. Gregg did not like it one bit. "Be off," he cried, and he shot them many more times. But it was no good. He simply could not hit them. All the way home those 4 ducks flew around in the sky above their heads, and nothing would make them go away. Late that night, after Philip and William had gone to bed, Mr. Gregg went outside to get some more wood for the fire. He was crossing the yard when all at once he heard the call of a wild duck in the sky. He stopped and looked up. The night was very still. There was a thin yellow moon over the trees of the hills, and the sky was filled with stars. Then Mr. Gregg heard the noise of wings flying low over his head, and he saw the 4 ducks against the night sky, flying very close together. They were going around and around the house. Mr. Gregg forgot about the firewood and hurried back indoors. He was quite afraid. He did not like what was going on, but he said nothing about it to Mrs. Gregg, and all he said was, "Come on, let's go to bed. I feel very tired." So they went to bed and to sleep. Okay, so I'm going to leave the story there. There's Mr. Gregg. He's seen the birds very close by, and we'll find out what happens on the next video. Okay.